This is my book, The Klein Method of Early Reading Mastery, and you can buy it on Amazon if you like. It does outline my method and my materials. It has explicit instructions for all of my games. I'm going to put into the chat box right now 2 chapters from my book. One of them is How Children Teach Themselves the Alphabet. And the other one is, you can see it in your chat box right now, How Children Teach Themselves to Decode. Actually, I didn't have my screen set, so I'm going to go back and show you my book. So these are a couple of chapters you can review and look and see if it's interesting to you. And I'll be covering the things that are in this chapter, How a Child Teaches Himself to Decode. I'm going to very briefly go through some of the concepts that we talked about last week. We talked about phonemic awareness, and that the phoneme is the smallest unit of speech sound of speech in spoken language. And we talked about how important it is for children to have phonemic awareness. The bottom line is that all of our instruction needs to go from speech to print, from sound to symbol, from concrete to abstract. And that begins when we're talking about letter recognition. And so one of the phonemic awareness skills that we talked a lot about last week was beginning sound isolation. We really need children to be able to look at house and say, to look at zebra and say, z, to look at a banana and say, b, to touch the table and say, t. Why? Because we want the child to understand how our language, how our printed language maps to our spoken language. So just briefly, if a child can look at bear and say b, then that child can understand that black abstract squiggly symbol next to the bear, and they can start to learn it at a deeper and more profound manner, and they're going to be able to do it through their own activities. So we talked about giving children beginning sound isolation by playing bingo games. Who has a b ball? Who has a m monkey? It's one of the games you can download. Actually, I'm going to put into my chat box right now another file for you. This is a visual catalog that shows you all of my materials. And when you click on any of the names of the materials, you can download it as a PDF file. So one of the games is the beginning sound cards. And so we model beginning sound isolation with children so they can hear us slice off the beginning sound. But once they can, on their own, isolate beginning sounds, we want them to use those bingo cards in an independent way by finding all, in this particular case, all the pictures that start with the same sound as sun. S. In this slide, I'm just simply observing as these little girls are independently finding the images that have the same beginning sound. So what we learned last week and what I emphasized is the alphabetic principle. The beginning sound isolation opens the door for a young child to learn the alphabet, to understand the alphabet, to master the alphabet. And whenever I talk about alphabet, I'm always talking about the sounds of letters, not the names of letters. But what I found when I work with those kindergarten and first and second grade kids, when I go to schools, the ones who are struggling, they actually don't know their alphabet sounds that well. So they've got some drop stitches. So the task of the early childhood educators, make sure the children have enough activities and games and repetition, hands-on choice, so they can really master the sounds of the alphabet. So we worked with Veronica last week. Veronica could tell me what the beginning sound of goat was. And I explained to her, well, the goat is telling us that little letter next door says G. Isn't that interesting? And the little letter that's next to the moon is telling us that it's a mm. The moon is telling us how to read those letters. And so very quickly, Veronica can understand the alphabetic principle. She can walk over to the alphabet chart and she can tell me the sound of every single letter on that chart if she knows the picture. Does that mean she knows them? Does that mean she'll know them tomorrow? No. But the beginning point is for her to understand the alphabetic principle, how sounds map to symbols, speech to print, sound to symbol, concrete to the abstract. Sound is concrete. It is vibration. If a child even just thinks a sound, their body is vibrating. So that's a concrete experience. Similarly, when we teach children mathematical concepts, we always want to put something in their hand to touch, to hold, to count, beads, bars, those kind of things. And then we add the abstract symbols on the chalkboard. So the concrete always comes first. This is a multiple choice activity. The hammer is basically asking the child, where is the seal asked Veronica, where is the s? So Veronica can figure out, and with my help, and I take a turn and she takes a turn, I can take a turn, figuring out where these pictures go based on their beginning sound. But of course, there's pictures at the top that are clues to where it belongs. It's multiple choice. It's not really a test, it's multiple choice. So I'm very big on letting children do things on their own with their hands, movable activities that they can choose from the shelf. And you can see if you're a kindergarten, first or second grade teacher, how these kind of activities would be pretty easy for your children, but in some cases very necessary for them to really get a grasp on the alphabet, the sounds of the alphabet. Then, of course, we can turn the card over so the picture isn't there, and it's the same game, but the picture clues aren't there, but it's still multiple choice. The goose is saying, where's the G? Oh, there it is. That's my old friend, the G. I've already seen him 10 or 12 or 15 times. And by the way, one of the principles I talked about last week is that I have my alphabet in clusters. I don't try to do the whole alphabet. Okay. Now let's talk about decoding. Phoneme segmentation is the most important reading readiness skill. It's the most important reading skill of everything. I cannot emphasize it enough. Phoneme segmentation is what breaks open the door for children who are struggling, and it allows those young children who are going to be learning how to decode, it allows them to go through the door, and we'll see how that works. So we need to have children who can look at boot and say b, oo, t, ch, ch, g, oo, s, b, x. Now, how do I do that? I play the blending game. Okay. So when I'm playing a blending game with a small group of children, I have a set of cards. You'll see them on the screen in a minute, and each card has a picture on it. No letters, just a picture. Let's see how this works. Okay, Veronica, watch my mouth and listen carefully. Guess what I have? K, up. Right, cup. Try another one. B, oo, t. Excellent. And then I hand her the card and I go to the next child. Ch, ch. Church. Okay, Thomas, it's your turn. G, oo, s. Okay, Thomas, I can make it harder for you. Thomas is asking me to make it harder for him. He likes it when I try to challenge him. I'm going to make it really hard, Thomas. Pay attention. B, a, x. Right. box. So you see what I did there? I started to separate the sounds further and further and further apart. So if I'm working with a group of 5 children or 6 or 10 or 3, I have my cards. And for Veronica, I'm going to keep the sounds close together. Ish. Right. Fish. For Thomas, I can spread them way far apart. Ah. So for each individual child, I can make the blending game a little bit different. Let's talk about why I'm playing this blending game. Actually, I'll show you this right now. This is another way that I play the blending game. It's a blending bingo card, and it's basically the same thing. I'll say, who has a picture of bus? And they put a game piece on and say bus. Who has a picture of ish, fish? And of course, because I'm the teacher, I can see which children have what images on their cards. So for Charles, I'm going to keep the sounds really close together. And for Thomas, I might even ask him to close his eyes. Okay, Thomas, I'm going to spread them way apart. Close your eyes. Good. Now, why are we doing this? Well, young children will use blending when they begin to decode or sound out the first words that they start to decode. Ah. They have to blend those sounds together to come up with cat. Now I'm going to show you what happens sometimes. Ah. Top. Why in the world would a child say top? I'll tell you why. And it happens not infrequently in kindergarten and first grade classrooms. It took the child so long to get from the k all the way down to the t. By the time he got there, he couldn't put the sounds together. So it's somewhat of a blending problem. So he's becoming really, really, really good at blending by playing the blending game with me. But actually, what's more insightful to me, I think, is that it took him too long to get from the first letter to the last letter. And by the time he got there, it became more difficult. Well, why did it take him so long to get from the k to the t? Well, that's just how fast he could do it. So it points to me, it indicates to me not so much a blending problem, but a letter recognition problem. Not a problem per se, but because he got them all right. But I guess the bottom line is we really want children to be really strong and automatic with their letter recognition. The main reason I'm playing the blending game is because I want to teach children how to segment. The entire time that I am giving Veronica and Thomas and Charles 3 sounds, d, a, g, and they're blending the sounds to guess the picture. The entire time I'm doing that, I am modeling for their brain the pulling apart of spoken words into their individual phonemes, called phoneme segmentation. This is the most important game that I could play with any child, especially a young child, and especially with a child who's struggling in kindergarten and first grade. Let's see how we're going to use phoneme segmentation in teaching children and having children teach themselves how to decode. Actually, before I do that, I want to, this is a slide that I sometimes forget to show, because I know that I have in my audience kindergarten and first and second grade teachers who are working with children who can decode, but their letter recognition isn't that great. And so it's slowing them down. They're not quite as successful as they need to be. So this is a great game. It involves segmentation of the word dog, d, a, g. The child cannot find the last sound of a word unless they can segment the word. It's not really a hearing activity. It's a brain phoneme segmentation activity. Phonemic awareness is not hearing, although it involves hearing. It's not a hearing skill. It's a phonological awareness skill, okay? So the child in this kind of activity gets to practice his phoneme segmentation, which you'll see in a few minutes how really important it is. But also, when he gets to the last sound of dog, d, a, g, now he's looking for the g. Well, there it is. It's right there. So he might have trouble reading the letter g, but he doesn't have any trouble finding the letter g. And there's a difference between reading a g and recognizing it as a multiple choice. So this is a multiple choice alphabet letter reading activity based on phoneme segmentation and the last sound. That makes sense to you. You guys might have questions about that at the end of our session, but this is exciting to me because it allows those children who are already decoding but aren't as good as they need to be with their alphabet knowledge to have practice with something that maybe seems a little bit challenging and it's not too much of a baby activity. The middle sound, I get lots of questions about the middle sound. How do you teach the middle sounds? So I don't teach the middle sounds. Well, what do you mean you don't teach the middle sounds? Well, let me show you. The child looks at the picture of fox, and of course, I'm going to take a turn. Thomas is going to take a turn. I'm going to take a turn. Thomas is going to take a turn until I feel like, okay, he gets the idea of this game. Let's think about the middle sound of fox. Ox. Ah. Oh, there's the ah right there. Your turn, Thomas. Cat. Give me the sound. Oh, I keep meaning to change that P underneath the cat. That's supposed to be a T, obviously. Sorry about that. I can't believe I haven't changed that yet. I apologize. Okay. Cat. At. What's the middle sound? Ah. There's the ah. Now let's think about this for a minute. A couple of things are happening. The child is getting better and better and better and better and better at his phoneme segmentation. Number one. Number two, he is giving himself the perfect middle sound, short sound when he says it himself. This is not a short vowel middle sound reading activity. It's a recognition of a letter based on a sound that the child gives himself. Nap, n, ah, ah. Oh, there it is right there. So every time he segments, for the most part, he is giving he's giving those sounds correctly, and he's then mapping it to a symbol. So it's really reinforcing the sounds of those 5 short vowels, which are problematic in beginning readers. Fox, ox, ah. There's the ah. So he's saying ah correctly, and then he recognizes where to put it. It's multiple choice. It's extremely reinforcing. Let's do net. It seems to me the short eh is the hardest of all, because then when they start to read the short e, it gets muffled and not saying it correctly. But when they segment the word net, they're generally saying it correctly. Okay, so those are just a few activities that you'll find that you can download or you can order from me. I'm going to actually put in the chat box because some teachers really don't want to make materials anymore. They'd much rather just buy them. And my materials are not expensive, and you can look at the catalog and you can always contact me and ask questions. So, okay. So just like beginning sound isolation was the open door for a child to understand and learn the alphabet, because it allowed him to understand the alphabetic principle. In the same way, phoneme segmentation allows the child to understand the alphabetic principle at the word level. So when a child looks at bus and can say us, he can map those sounds onto those symbols. It's not really decoding, but it's sort of like decoding, and it gives the child an understanding of how to map spoken language with written language. Now I'll get to decoding. I promise. I promise. This, to me, is the most important activity that a teacher can have in her classroom besides phoneme segmentation and blending games. We want to encode spoken language. We want to build words. And this activity is called a word pocket. Let me show you how I do that. Veronica, this is a new activity. And let's take the pictures and the letters out of the little pocket, spread them out. Let's mix them up. What are the sounds of pig? And she says, p, I, g. Good. Now, Veronica, I want you to say the sounds of pig. And as you say them, I'm going to move the letters. Ready? P, I, G. Okay, excellent. Now you take a turn. Say the sounds of pig and then move the letters. P, I, G. Okay, excellent. The segmentation of the word pig is deriving the engine of this activity. The child is actually not required to read those letters. Think about that. This is also multiple choice letter recognition. So those children that you have in first and second grade and kindergarten who are sort of decoding, but their letter recognition isn't great, this strengthens their phoneme segmentation and it strengthens the letter recognition without testing them. It's not a test. I'm going to go back to this. This is a test. This is a test. That's all you can say. It's a test. There are no pictures, nothing to give a child a clue of what it is. Not only, the test has 3 parts. There's a C and an A and a T, and the child has to get them all right or he gets it wrong. So decoding is a test. And because I come from an early childhood environment, I don't want to be testing children. I want to give them an opportunity to learn stuff through their own activities and through multiple choice. So Veronica may or may not know her letter sounds really, really well, but she's sure getting a chance to practice them here in a multiple choice kind of activity. Encoding words is the most powerful way to prepare a child for decoding words. That's the bottom line. If any of you have ever studied any of the Orton-Gillingham methods of teaching and reading instruction, you know that a core piece of any of the Orton-Gillingham science of reading practices is building words, encoding words with movable tiles. When I see a child that can put a word together from movable letters like this, it shows me that they understand what's going on with our written and spoken language. That doesn't mean they can decode. Doesn't even mean that they know their letters really, really well. It just means that they're engaged at the right place. They really understand what's going on. Now let's see where this is going to lead to. I love my pictures of children using the movable alphabet, these little movable letters, because this is just, it thrills my heart when I see teachers doing encoding activities. This little boy was really struggling. Oops, excuse me. He's a struggling reader. So the teacher took him back to these basic activities. In fact, he was just not being successful. He was just over his head and didn't quite know, he didn't quite understand what was going on. So this gave him a sense of accomplishment, sort of put him on a path toward, toward decoding mastery. Building words or encoding words is reading instruction at the word level. Now I'm going to show you another slide real quick. See if I can pull it up. Okay, Veronica, what are the sounds of sun? And she says, s, n. Okay. Now we're going to take our finger and we're going to take the sounds of sun and put them right on there. Ready? S, n, sun. Let's do another one. Oh, this is a picture of sad. He's so sad. Okay, ready? Take the sounds of sad and put it on the letters. Ready? S, a, d, sad. Let's do one more, Veronica. I want you to do this one all by yourself. D, a, g, dog. So this is one way that I start to introduce to the child the act of actually decoding. But it isn't decoding, is it? It looks like decoding. It tastes like decoding. It smells like decoding, but it's not decoding. But the brain thinks it's decoding. We're teaching the brain how to decode. So this particular material is also really good for children to practice their decoding when they don't have any pictures. So this particular set, the cards are face down, and they have a small group of children at the table, and there's a deck of cards, or maybe each of the children have a little small deck of cards, and they take turns. B-O-G, bog. Oh, it's dog. Now that's a common mistake, isn't it? So the child, because he didn't get it right, he'll take the picture and put it at the bottom, take the card and put it at the bottom of his pile. Now, for a child who's a little bit older, they're going to catch themselves and realize, well, there's no such thing as a bog. Well, we know there is as adults. A bog is some sort of a swampy thing, right? But the child wouldn't know what a bog is. So he'll go, bog, what's a bog? Oh, dog. Okay. So children get a lot of practice decoding with this activity. I really like this activity because it's not direct instruction. They're playing a game with each other. They're not allowed to turn the card over until they've read the word. But before they've done this, they've practiced with it this way, where they're actually looking at the picture and putting the sounds on the card. So I wanted to show you that real quickly, because I think this is a nice game. This is another way that children can map the sounds of a word to the printed word. So when I took a turn with fan, I went fan, n. Let's see if it's the first one. No. There it is. So most teachers and most parents, when I give them this game, they think that the child is supposed to read those 3 words. Now, if the child can, great. But mostly this activity is for a child who's either learning how to decode or is not doing so well. So the mapping of the sounds from run, n, no, no, there it is. And then I put the game piece on. So this is a really, really nice activity. Again, it's not really decoding, is it? Because the picture is basically telling the child to map those sounds onto the printed word. It's extremely good in reinforcing the letter sounds. It's extremely excellent in making sure the child is segmenting. Same thing here. When I'm taking a turn, I'm always going to start with the picture, and then I'm going to find the label. This looks really funny to a lot of teachers, and they don't like it. But lo and behold, the children love it. They get to use game pieces. It's sort of like a little puzzle. I call them word puzzles. Jet, jet. And so they take the game pieces, and I like it. They should be transparent so that you can see the letters through the game piece. So they're segmenting jet, and they're reinforcing the letter sounds and the letters for that word jet. So it's not decoding, but it's sort of like decoding, and it's an extremely powerful way to help children become better decoders, or with younger children to teach them how to decode. Here's that struggling little guy that I showed you earlier, and he just could not be happy because everyone else was reading and he didn't quite know what was going on. But once the teacher started using some hands-on materials, he found some things that he was able to do successfully. He was really, much more engaged, much happier. And of course, we definitely want decoding that has no picture. But as I said before, these are tests. This is just a stack of cards that are all tests. Now, the child who doesn't know his alphabet very well is going to struggle a little bit. But if he knows them pretty well, he'll make mistakes, and that's okay. You know, it's okay for children to make mistakes. They don't need to be pointed out to. We don't need to be pointing them out all the time. Give them a chance to make some mistakes and practice. I might give a child 5 cards and say, okay, Thomas, go practice those, and then come back and read them to me. So practice, repetition, success is really important for these young children. We've got to be giving them activities that they can succeed at. Now, in the environments that I have helped create, this is the environment in South Africa where I was in 2018. All of the 3-letter work is all in one little section. If a child can segment and has some knowledge of letter sounds, they can start doing these activities. This is a Montessori school in Midrand, South Africa. As you know, South Africa, one of the legacies of apartheid was the poor literacy rates among the Black population. And these parents friends of mine who have a school there, I taught their child in 1st grade many years ago. They remembered me, they called me up, I went over with my sister and we implemented these methods and made materials all week long. They really wanted to bring literacy to their underserved community there in the Black neighborhood where they are. So for those of you who work with children who are a little bit older, I think one of the most important things, besides understanding that phoneme segmentation is huge, is that reading problems primarily occur at the word level. And we've got to be giving these children activities at the word level, not having them open a book and read to us. That's fine. That's nothing wrong with that. But if they're struggling, it's because they're struggling with decoding. And if they're struggling with decoding, they're struggling with letter recognition. And in many cases, especially if they have dyslexic tendencies, they're struggling with phoneme segmentation. As the children are doing pretty well with decoding 3-letter words, I'm going to start preparing them to work with 4-letter words. 4-letter words have 4 phonemes. So we're going to play the blending game with 4 sounds. Okay, Veronica, listen carefully. S, w, e, m. Right. Swim. T, e, n, t. Tent. Right. Okay, so it's the same game, but it's got 4 sounds. I don't mix the 4 sounds with the 3 sounds in the beginning, especially with younger children. And then one of the other things I do when I'm playing the blending game is at some point, I'm going to go back to my 3 phoneme words. At some point, I want Veronica to give me 3 sounds. And I have to guess what it is. She's going to give me 3 sounds. And I have to guess what it is, because I want to listen to her segment. And in the beginning, they're not really great at it, but they're sort of got it. But what I'm looking for is practice, because I want those 3 sounds, and then eventually the 4 sounds, to be very crisp and discreet and clean and not sloppy and mushy. So I didn't mention that before, but I always, at some point with some children, will give them the cards and let them be the teacher. And then I'm listening to them and how well they're doing it. I don't teach blends. I teach blending and I teach segmentation. So people look at this and think, oh, you're teaching them the ST. I am not teaching them the ST. I'm actually helping them and get practice to separate the 2 sounds. They have to be able to get the S separated from the T in order to find which letter combination goes with it. I don't think I'm explaining that very well, but even if you don't understand what this game is, it's a great practice for children who are decoding 4-letter words and who are struggling with decoding at any level. O, A, G. So the same games, now I'm doing them with four letters, 4 sounds. Now, by this point, if children are decoding 3-letter words pretty well, I don't necessarily graduate them to 4 letters. I don't say, okay, you don't need to do 3 letters anymore. I want them to continue doing 3-letter words until they're really good at them. But I'm going to start to introduce 4-letter words so they can start teaching themselves how to work with 4 sounds. So these materials are great for that. Now, by this point, the child is much, much better at his letter recognition. So it's very conceivable the child will actually want to read all 3 words to figure out which is the right one. So it doesn't matter how they get the right answer. They're either segmenting the picture of fast and then finding where it maps, or they're reading the 3 words and figuring out what the right answer is, or maybe intuitively their brain, their subconscious mind is starting to immediately go to the right word, and then they can check it. I'm just going to go through some more slides and then we'll take some questions. So I organize all my activities according to how many letters it has, 3 letters or 4 letters. The other thing I wanted to show you real quickly before I take lessons, for those of you who do teach early childhood and kindergarten, I do teach in clusters. Oops, wrong picture. Oh, I apologize. I'm jumping all over the place. Here we go. Okay, I teach in clusters. Doesn't really matter what cluster you have, but I think it's important for you to organize your material according to clusters. And then after they've really learned the games that I showed you with those 5 letters, I can start to introduce another cluster of letters. They already understand now the concept of going from the duck, figuring out that that says D, or the lion is telling them that that says ol. But then they have a whole series of games they can play that were very similar, that are the same games that they played with the first 5 letters. And so they start to go through systematically the alphabet in small clusters. I wanted to tell you about that because some of you might have missed last week's presentation. And I think this is important as you're creating your environment. And also, I think it's helpful for kindergarten teachers who have some kids who are already, you know, they're pretty good, but they just need some more letter work. Okay, fun. This has been fun. Okay, well, I am going to put on my little slideshow. You can sit and watch the slides I've prepared. I'm going to just sit in the background. If you have questions, you can just unmute and call me out of my slumber or whatever I might be doing. I'm so grateful you joined me today. Please spread the word. You'll get emails from me. I'm not sure how you found me, but I'm glad you found me. And let me put into the text box, a chat box, where you can, let's see, you can contact me and give me some feedback. Give me your email address. Thank you so much for joining me today.